Motivational interviewing is awesome, but what is an example of motivational interviewing? And if I wanted to do one, how do I start it? In this video, you'll hear from Sandstone Care CEO, Michael Hunter, as he explains the OARS concept and how to use it to shape a motivational interview. Hey, it's Clint with Sandstone Care, where we help teens, young adults, and their families overcome challenges that come with substance use, addiction, and mental health conditions. All right, let's get right to it.
So collectively, what you're talking about is just a specific set of behaviors. So we're typically asking open-ended questions, using affirmations, reflective listening, and summaries, right? That's all we're doing with motivational interviewing in terms of the behaviors themselves, but it's how those behaviors get deployed that makes it motivational interviewing or not, right? Rogerian or kind of non-directional conversations with clients use those same skill sets, use those same behaviors. So they just get employed differently. Part of motivational interviewing is understanding where folks are stuck in their ambivalence. Are they stuck because they feel like they can't make the change happen, even if they want it to happen? Do they feel like they're not able to make the change, even if they want it? Or is it an issue of importance? It's just, they feel like they could do it if they wanted to. It's just not important right now in their lives. And so, in motivational interviewing, if the issue is somebody feeling like they just can't do it, oftentimes strategically what we're up to is helping to link other successful behavior changes in their life to the current struggle. The gentleman in particular that I mentioned just a little bit ago, the key for him in his exploration was that he was the COO of an organization. He started at an entry-level position and worked his way up through the company and ended up in this really cool position there. And he was very proud of that. And so we started talking about all the things that made him successful in getting to where he was career-wise. And it turned out that a lot of the strategies that made him successful there were strategies that he was able to employ in the way he was thinking about addiction. So he sort of came to know himself as being more powerful in addressing the behavior than he thought he was initially. And that was very powerful. And so one powerful tool, of course, is linking the current struggles with previous successful behavior change and finding parallels between those. Another, if the change is not important, is to help develop discrepancy between where somebody sees themselves now and important future goals, or where somebody sees themselves at now and their set of values. If people feel like their values are in conflict with the current behavior, it creates discomfort, cognitive dissonance. We don't like that experience as human beings. We generally will either resolve it in one of two ways. We're either changing our behavior or we compromise our values and change those. And so in exploring those, we help in some ways to turn up the temperature on that cognitive dissonance a little bit, which can increase the importance and the urgency of making the change now. So it increases the likelihood that someone will make the change. So we can give some examples of questions for sure. I think one of the challenges that comes up when learning motivational interviewing is that it needs to look a specific way. And oftentimes that's one of the challenges that comes up when you see somebody demonstrating it, is it's easy to assume that that person is doing it the one right way. And so there's a tendency to want to emulate that. And really, motivational interviewing is an incredibly flexible system, which is one of the reasons that for me, I really fell in love with it, is it is as flexible as the clinician practicing it. And so there is no one right way to respond. And even though generally speaking, right, the strategy might be to increase change talk over time, that doesn't mean that we don't explore the difficulties that people have in making the change. Oftentimes, people can get stuck in feeling like other people don't understand their struggle. And so until somebody understands the nature of the struggle, it becomes difficult to move on from what makes it hard. And so sometimes you have to sort of establish through, often open-ended questions or reflections, what it is that's making an experience difficult for someone. And so maybe a classic open-ended question in a situation like that might be as simple as, what are some of the good and not so good things about smoking marijuana? And that's a lot of what motivational interviewing is about. It's about understanding the dynamics in conversation. What kind of reflection, or what kind of a response is this reflection or this open-ended question going to produce in the other person, right? For instance, let's say you were an adolescent coming into treatment and you were smoking marijuana and you really liked it. It's just that your parents don't like it, right? Even subtle language changes can influence kind of how somebody is likely to respond. So in that situation, if I were to say, tell me all the bad things about smoking marijuana, I might get a response that's like, well, there is nothing bad about it. The bad thing about smoking marijuana is that my parents are terrible and they want me to stop. That's the bad thing, right? And so using kind of exploratory soft language around some of those explanations can help prevent it from becoming contentious. In motivational interviewing, oftentimes what we talk about is that resistance or, kind of that push-pull of the conversation is actually created oftentimes by the person, the clinician who's having the conversation with the client, right? In the language that they're using, in some of the assumptions that get telegraphed to the other person. Remember, the goal here is not to assert my values onto the person I'm having the conversation with, but to understand their value set, right? What's important to them. And you may find that there's alignment in unusual places, right? So oftentimes when adolescents do make behavior change around something like marijuana, for instance, it's not necessarily because they're saying, I want to remain sober for the rest of my life, and that is the only thing that matters to me. Oftentimes, it's a subtle adherence to a non-obvious value, like I want my parents off my back. I want a good relationship with my parents. I want to do better, in this other area of my life. Or by kind of exploring those things in an open-ended, non-judgmental, there's that kind of the unconditional positive regard that you're going to see this person as an amazing human being, no matter what it is that they share with you. You're committed to seeing kind of the nature in them that is powerful and good and positive. And when people get a sense of that, they tend to explore in a less guarded and in a way that's less set on stacking the deck against behavior change. Yeah, so affirmations typically recognize a strength or a quality of a person that's admirable. Affirmations also at times are an opportunity for a potential reframe of something somebody else sees as a weakness, but from a certain point of view is a strength. So if I were having a conversation with someone and they mentioned, well, I've been to treatment 3 times before, and the longest I was ever able to stay sober was only a month. And it's just an absolute failure, and I can't believe I couldn't do it. And so I don't think I'm going to be able to do it here because it's just more failure, right? The potential strength there is that you actually are talking about a person who every day for 30 days woke up, made the decision to be sober, and then was successful throughout the course of the day, no matter what came up. A powerful reframe there, right, is, wow, okay, you were able every day to stay sober for that period of time. What were you doing during that 30 days that made you so successful? Or, oftentimes you're talking to someone and they frame something in a conversation in a way that's different than you would have thought to frame it. And, that may be an opportunity to say, wow, I really like the way that you framed that. Or, you've done an impressive job of hitting your goals this week, right? And for many folks, affirmations are not a natural cadence in their conversation. And generally speaking, it can be powerful to do that, especially for somebody that's coming to you who is face to face with this massive struggle, this thing that they are up against. And they may feel like nobody sees them as strong, capable, or competent. And so recognizing those areas where they are, any of those things and more, can be very powerful in terms of building that sense of self-efficacy, or that sense of one's own ability to accomplish change. So you're kind of actively reinforcing those qualities as they become evident through the course of the conversation. I think affirmations are also more powerful the further they are removed from the person giving the affirmation. So if I were to say something like, wow, you did a really amazing job hitting the goals that you had set last week, right? It's a little detached. It's it is a quality assessment of what they've done, but it is different than saying, wow, I'm really proud of the way that you did X, Y, or Z, right? Where somehow I'm inserting myself as an important figure and my pride somehow should be impacting you, or, that sort of dynamic that gets created by inserting a little more self of clinician than really what is necessary, if that makes sense. In other words, the conversation really is about the person you're talking with, not about us. And so whether my own value judgments, to the degree that I can let those drop away and be framing even the affirmations in their language and according to their value system, that only is going to reinforce their likelihood for success. Kind of an interesting rabbit hole there is I did 2 years where I was working on doing ongoing kind of advanced level motivational interviewing training for a women's shelter. And one of the things that they shared with me is that oftentimes when a woman would leave her abuser, that this was a process that would statistically occur about 3 times before that person would leave for good. And that oftentimes for clinicians, there was a tendency when they were finally ready to leave to jump on the bandwagon of really bashing the person that they were leaving. And what they found is that doing that really communicated in a strong, overt way the value system of the clinician, which made the clients less likely to come back to that same location in the future if they went back into a relationship with that person. Whereas if that value system wasn't overtly sort of, blasted onto that person, then they felt that there was less judgment, that they could come back, that they could have those conversations. Reflective listening is just the coolest thing there has ever been in the history of human communication. It is the clinical skill most highly correlated with good client outcomes. And it also tends to be difficult to learn, and it's difficult to learn to do it well. Reflective listening is a way of hearing what someone is telling you and then checking your interpretation of what they are telling you back with them by kind of reframing it and giving it back to validate that you understand what the person is telling you. There are all sorts of reasons that communication can break down. There are all sorts of reasons why I might misunderstand you. And so reflective listening closes the loop on that. Sometimes you may be talking with somebody who doesn't have the vocabulary to articulate in detail exactly what it is that they're struggling with. And so maybe their words don't even at times match the intention of the message, right? And so being able to check our interpretation against theirs is an important part of validating that we're on the same page as them, right? Wow, sounds like you're really struggling in this relationship with your mom because she nags you all the time about your marijuana smoking, which you don't think is that big of a deal, right? So kind of checking, am I getting this? Am I getting what you're putting out there? And in the beginning, reflective listening is powerful in that function. It serves the function of validating conversation, but with skill and practice over time, what you learn with reflections is you're going to be thoughtful about what you reflect. So you're picking out the parts of the client's statement deliberately that you want to reflect back so that that's what they're likely to run with. And so, especially where change talk is concerned, right? You might hear someone say something like, like I wish I could stay sober, but over and over again, I fail. And my relationship with my wife is terrible as a result of it. And to be honest, I'm not even sure that anything in my life really makes a difference that I do, right? There's a lot there. There's tons to unpack. And so what you reflect out of that statement kind of will determine where the person moves next. And so you can, so you mentioned at the beginning of that statement that you wish you could stay sober. And so there's some part of you that seems to be kind of hanging on to that despite all of these things that are coming up for you. So summaries essentially are kind of complex reflections where we're taking bits and pieces throughout the conversation, pulling those together, kind of presenting them back. David Rosengren, who's one of the folks that taught at the training of new trainers when we did that in New Mexico, said, we're kind of gathering these bits and pieces and handing it back to them in a bouquet, right? So summaries can help bring things together, transition to a new topic, or frame the totality of the conversation and what's been accomplished so far. And so those are kind of your basic skills with motivational interviewing. And you're really employing those along the lines of certain principles. So you're up to 4 things using those tools. And so you're developing discrepancy, as I mentioned, rolling with resistance. So resistance in motivational interviewing is not generally directly confronted, and it's more of a style where we're working on collaborating. We're not directly challenging things, and so there tends to be lower friction in those kinds of conversations. We're expressing empathy, which is basically reflective listening, checking our understanding against theirs, and then we're supporting their self-efficacy or their sense that they have the ability to accomplish what they set out to accomplish.
If you want to learn more about treatment options for you, your teen, or young adult, then tell us about your situation on a confidential call using the number linked up in the description box below, or live chat with us at sandstonecare.com. We'll connect you with the treatment that you need, and if we're not the right fit, we'll get you where you need to go. Be well, and remember that change is possible.